Welcome everyone to my first video on the Dawn of the Hunt version 0.2 new season in Path of Exile 2, and I'm quite excited for this because they've just released the Huntress class and the Amazon Ascendancy, which is what I was gunning for, as well as a new weapon type which is the Spear. So I've started fresh in the season at level 1 and I went straight for Spears, and I will do sort of like a video series chronicling my progress throughout the campaign and the changes that I do. In this video, I'll cover right at the start of Act 1 what I did all the way until I unlocked the Ascendancy. At the time of making of this video, I just completed the trial. I haven't even allocated the points yet, but the trial was completed at level 21. I dinged to level 22 right after I killed the boss at the end of the trial. So this is a fairly comfortable build overall, and one of the reasons why I decided to do this also is a lot of people were struggling with the spear weapon, in particular right at the start of the game, and one of the reasons why is due to the parry disengage mechanic, where at least for the start of the game, that is the only way that you can generate frenzy charges. So going straight off first to the skill build, and then I'll cover the passive tree progression, and then finally just a little bit about the gear to get you to this point and complete your ascendancy. Right at the start of Act 1, the very first skill that you should unlock should be Explosive Spear.
Explosive spears stick into the ground where they
So Explosive Spears is quite good because they do a lot of damage. The drawback to offset the high damage is that you can only normally throw one, and it takes 2.5 seconds for the spear to explode unless it's empowered by a frenzy charge. So this should be the very first skill you cut when you get your first skill gem. And once you get support gems, what you should cut first is Overabundance. Overabundance allows you to throw 2 spears at once, and therefore more or less double your damage because you're throwing 2 spears and you get 2 explosions. And then after Overabundance, the second support gem that you should cut should be any support gem that increases damage. I think the most straightforward is Fire Infusion, because Fire Infusion doesn't increase the mana cost and it gives you a nice 25% damage. The reduction in Cold and Lightning doesn't matter because at the start of the game, Explosive Spear is exclusively fire damage anyway. So this is really all you need. And then the second skill that you should cut is Disengage. Now Disengage doesn't really require any supports. The only reason you want Disengage is to reposition yourself, as well as get the occasional Frenzy Charge together with Parry. Now one distinction here that I want to say is that with Explosive Spear and then Disengage and Parry, you don't need to try to fish for the Frenzy Charge. If you do get a Frenzy Charge, it's a bonus because it allows your next Explosive Spear to be instant detonation and you get bonus damage and Burning Ground on top of that. But if you don't get the Frenzy Charge, it hardly matters. You just throw 2 Explosive Spear and wait for it to explode, and that's your damage right at the start of the game. So essentially what I did at the start of the game once I get Explosive Spear and Disengage is I throw 2 Explosive Spear to the mobs and then I run into the mobs. Before the spear explodes, I just hold Parry. The only reason I do this is so that I lure all the mobs into the explosion radius where I threw my spear, and then if I get hit while I'm parrying, I can then just disengage and then I get a frenzy charge that way, and disengage will reposition me back so I can throw 2 more spears. Right, so I can throw 2 more spears down onto the ground. So you just rinse and repeat. You just throw 2 spears, you run in, you parry. Whether or not you get the frenzy charge doesn't matter. Once your Explosive Spear explodes, that's when you disengage and then you rinse and repeat. Pretty straightforward for the start of the game, and the high damage from Explosive Spear will really make it easy. And if any stragglers survive the explosion, you just hit them down with your basic spear attack. But the goal, at least for the start of the game, before you unlock other skills, is you just go from pack to pack. So don't focus too much on the 1 or 2 zombies shuffling around. Just run straight to the boss or run to the next pack, throw Explosive Spears to kill them, and then you move on. Alright, so after that, once you unlock level 3 skills, the next one that you should get is Rake. Rake will complement your Explosive Spear because Rake is also a traveling attack in the sense that it propels you forward. So the way it works now is pretty much the same as before. So you throw in 2 Explosive Spear at range, and then you just rake in to instantly get into the radius of your Explosive Spears, as well as apply bleeds to the mob. So the rest is the same. Then you just hold parry, you disengage, you throw 2 new spears, and then you rake again, and so on. The rake will also help you kill off any of the stragglers because it applies bleed, and there's very few mobs, or at least non-bosses, that will be able to survive both the explosive spear and the bleeding from rake. Now in terms of support, and this is pretty important for rake, what you want to get first is Stomping Ground. Because rake is a traveling skill, you get extra damage from Stomping Ground that scales with your strength stat, and I'll cover a bit more into that soon. And then on top of that, you want some sort of damaging support skill on rake. The more damage rake does, the more bleed it applies, so this helps you to kill bosses and uniques. So the one that I went for is Concentrated Effect. You don't really need the AoE, and Concentrated Effect is also mana friendly. It doesn't have a mana multiplier. But if you don't want this and you want the AoE, you can just put any other damaging support skill onto rake. Now because you've taken Stomping Ground, what you want to do when you go through the passive tree is try to focus on strength whenever possible, unless of course you need dexterity or intelligence as a requirement to use support gems or to equip certain gear. Once you hit middle of Act 1 where you get your first 30 spirit, I went for Herald of Blood. I didn't put in any supports on Herald of Blood. That's because I'm low on support gems. I've cut quite a lot of different gems at the start to test out the different skills, so I ran low. But it doesn't really matter too much. Just use Herald of Blood. This helps you complement rake and your explosive spear. So rake applies the bleed, and then explosive spear finishes them off, and because they've got a bleed, Herald of Blood will proc and cause mini AoE explosions as well. So this is the tree that I guess together with this engage that took me right to the end of Act 1, where I killed the boss of Act 1 pretty easily overall. Now when it comes to Act 2, you start to unlock the rank 5 gems. So what I went for is Storm Lance, and I used Storm Lance to replace Explosive Spear on my bar essentially. Now this is a choice that you make. Explosive Spear is more damage, but I went for Storm Lance because it's some sort of, you throw it on the ground and then you just forget about it, and it lasts longer than Explosive Spear, so in a way you don't have to press it as often. And it does do less damage than Explosive Spear, but still fairly nice overall. As a bonus, this can potentially apply Shock as well, and Shock increases the damage enemies take from your attacks, which means that your rake will do more damage, which also means that you will apply more bleed when you are raking shocked enemies. So the rotation is the same. For Stormlands, what I did is have Scattershot. Scattershot actually allows you to throw 3 lances on the ground at once. You do sacrifice a little bit of damage for it, but you get 3 lances at once, so I think that's a good trade-off. You can put in other things. You don't have to throw 3 lances. I suppose you can just put in some sort of damaging support skill here if you want, or something like maybe Martial Tempo or something to increase the attack speed. That's really based on your preference. And then I just put Lightning Infusion for the added damage. You can also put Crossing Currents to help with the shock, or Overcharge as well. So those are some pretty nice options altogether. But the idea is you then get 1 projectile skill and 1 melee skill, and this helps a lot when it comes to the passive tree. So talking about passive tree, it's very straightforward, at least for this portion of the game. So at the start I opted for attack damage. More attack damage means bigger explosions from Explosive Spear, and also of course bigger damage from Rake and bigger bleeds from Rake as well. So you just move along here. Stalk and Leap is very good. It just requires you to more or less alternate between projectile attacks and melee attacks, and it goes perfectly with the build because you would then have Rake as well as either Explosive Spear or Storm Lance. So you should be getting this bonus practically all the time. So you just continue on down the tree. Now you soon hit a line of attributes, and this is what I was talking about when I covered Stomping Grounds on Rake. Ideally, you want to put Strength as much as possible, and then you take Escape Velocity. I like this because it gives me more move speed, which helps a lot during campaign. And then I don't have a jewel yet, so I just go through here. You can see that I focus a lot on strength. I went for Maiming Strike to get the main bonus, but mainly it's the attack damage. And then here I took a few decks because I needed this to equip some higher level skills. And then my next aim is to fill up the spear tree right here. So very straightforward, and this should help you very easily clear both Act 1 and even the Ascendancy in Act 2. So a little bit about the gear, and here you can also see my stats on the left hand side. I have a lot of cold rest, and that was mainly because I bought a sapphire ring. I found one magical one in the vendor, and then I just used regal orbs on it. Cold rest is quite good for Act 1 because Lord Geonor does primarily cold damage, so you have a better time surviving if you have higher cold resistance. But I digress. Coming back to the gear, the main gear piece that you just need to focus on is the weapon really, and you want as high physical damage as possible. So this is something that I got near the end of Act 1, and it's actually not very hard to find high physical damage spears. What you want to do is every time you level, just check the equipment vendor in Clearfell Town in Act 1 and try to look for affixes that increases physical damage. So it shouldn't take too long to find one with like 30-40% more physical damage or even flat physical damage, and that's good enough. So just buy that and throw in whatever orbs that you have, minus exalted orbs. Please don't waste your exalted orbs in starting gear. So I just used up till a regal orb, and that's it. And then I add a socket and put in an iron rune to get more 15% physical damage. Physical damage is best because your elemental spears converts physical damage into their appropriate element, and obviously for Rake and Blitz it also scales on physical damage, so really all you need is a very high physical damage spear, as high as you can find. And then this is the only gear that you really should be looking for as you check the vendor each time you go back into town. Now for the rest of the gear is really whatever that you can find as you do the campaign. The only thing I guess I will try to focus on is obviously resistances. Early game life is pretty good because it helps your survivability, and if you can also get it, try to get some gear with strength as well. So strength helps a lot because again it boosts the damage on Stomping Ground. All of this is really optional. If you can find strength on gear, it's good. Otherwise, just get high physical damage spear. For rings, whatever flat damage that you can find is good. I wouldn't really worry too much about this. This is just icing on top of the cake. So that's it for the first video. I will be updating this as I progress along the campaign. I hope this video helps, and till then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!